Just, okay, got it.
No, I talked to her on the phone.
Did you get burnt?
Oh no, I had a cold,
Oh,
so that's
the
why I'm
worst.
super duper froggy and look like this.
I can tell you also.
I'm a burner.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I know we got a lot of redheads in my family. I'm not one of them, but. Alrighty, here we go. Okay.
Go hide in the tree.
Okay, yeah.
Let her know. Just wait.
Hi folks, if you haven't signed a guest book, please come on over. Oh yeah. Oh, okay. She was involved with so many organizations. I didn't know her. Okay. I know how hard it is to get through here. The grass is really nice. Anyway. And I didn't apply for
No, the chairs were on the other side of the big function.
Yeah, well, he can get himself up and down. Yeah.
Ryan said that. I was just going to say,
But he's not getting back. No, it's nice.
Meet again.
$2,600.
Yeah.
Dang. I would have snagged that.
And they thought our estrogen dose was too high or something.
Well, and I let them know.
Almost 2 years.
Well, maybe Barbara. Hi. Barbara Zimmerman. Another amazing neighbor.
Yeah, but there's a lot of things.
Just say,
Please
I said,
And the other
probably the other way. She's a scientist. So I think usually. Oh, I think. No. I'll show you But also, I'll tell you though, every time walking, using a cane. I had seen her put it. But when she wasn't there, I was there. You know, the last person helping me. Well, when she said, do it this way. Do it on word, you know, so much easier for everybody to open it. There's, you know, not young. What pressure is it? Oh,
Nate, did you see this? The stone is already there. She had a name. Yeah. Put on there. Just the dates missing. Yeah, so now this is what my father did as well. They have to now move the stone. Like he must be buried right here. She'll be next to him. Well, hang on, she's going to go and turn there. Right. So what happens to the stone? They must have to move it over so to be halfway between the two. Yeah, she was clever to do that. Yeah, he did it.
Yeah.
Oh, there was. They were the same age. They were both born in, 2 months apart in 1930. That's right. What is above her name? What does Pen mean? Never seen that.
And if you said,
I have to ask Karen. Oh, there's another one over there. Yeah, yeah. Where we go? Oh, yeah.
Really, Mark, man.
So what do you call it?
Are you angry? Treated. Yeah, it does.
Well, that's.
Oh.
Yeah, that's funny here. I see. I don't know how far the Jewish section goes. They'll find it the farthest part. Yeah, so the entire.
Oh, yeah, he was so proud of that. I know.
Yeah. No, actually, I spoke to Bill and he said that food starts, so you got the guy suddenly start talking about 20-ish. I said, well, what about the food? It's amazing. I said to him, aren't you guys?
He said he's not.
These two here. Plain.
That's what it's supposed to say. Right through here.
No, it's just this guy here.
have Amy and Mark and Stan come forward, please, for Priya. We witnessed the loving way in which Harriet's grandchildren carried her to her final resting place. How many times did she carry them in her arms as babies, as toddlers, as children? That love is now returned, and they're carrying her and bearing her to her final place of rest. We now have the traditional tearing of the ribbon. In biblical times, we would rend our garments, wear the torn garment for 40 days as a sign to all of us that we were in a state of mourning. The torn ribbon of modern times serves the same function. It lets all who meets us know that someone we love has been torn from our lives. We need to be treated with extra love and extra care. It is traditionally worn for the next 30 days. But the ribbon is not torn entirely, because even someone we love is no longer with us physically. They will always be with us in our heart, in our mind, in our thoughts, and in our deeds. Yes. Adonai, our Creator, with the gift of your Spirit, we are formed. You take it in return, and we become once again part of the earth. We are grateful for the many blessings in the life of Harriet Rosen. We are bowed by grief because of our loss. And now her mourners turn to you, Adonai, seeking comfort and light. O God of compassion, grant all who mourn her solace and strength. Reinforce their faith in you, for you are our rock and our Redeemer. Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakat, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevareh. The Lord has given, the Lord has taken. Blessed be the name of the Lord. I'd like to read a poem by Merit Malloy. When I die, give what is left of me away to children, to old men that wait to die, And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give to me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not on your mind. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, by letting arms embrace other arms, and by letting go of children when they need to be free. Love doesn't die. People do. So when all that is left of me is love, give me away. Almighty God, Master of mercy, healer of the brokenhearted, let neither death nor sorrow have dominion over us. Grant comfort and strength and consolation unto those who mourn the loss of Harriet. May we always cherish what was eternal and imperishable in her life. Bless her family with love and with peace, that they may serve you with all their heart. And may her memory inspire all who are honored to know her to deeds of justice, goodness, and loving kindness. And we say together, Amen. We now join together in the reading of the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me to lie down in green pastures. God leads me beside the still waters. God restores my soul. God guides me in straight paths for God's name. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely, goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. And I, a righteous woman, will dwell in the house of Adonai forever. I'd now like to call upon Mark, Harriet's beloved son, for a few words.
Well, right to the very end, Mom considered herself a lucky woman. She'd been afraid, at least a lot in the last few months, that she might not have been so lucky, that she might have passed alone. She's afraid that she could have suffered from pain and from unnecessary extraordinary measures, but she didn't. She's always been a planner, and although the timing fell off to us, I don't think it fell off to her with regards to what happened. I can't help but feel that even before she left Colorado for Massachusetts, on a subconscious level, she somehow knew what her body was doing and willed herself through that move. She hadn't moved. When she did, this cascade that happened would have begun with Mom in Denver, me in British Columbia, and Amy in Florida, not as far as possible from her as it could have been. But instead, because she was in Massachusetts, Zeke and Ursi both got to attend her in Boston while Amy and I got there. Since my dad passed away in 2019, I've gotten to discover my mom more. When I began traveling to Denver more frequently to see her, I was gratified to discover how many circles of people and friends she had developed. Their neighbors at Hilltop Reserve and neighbors from Glencoe, fellow volunteers from the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, friends from the congregation in the Habra, and all kinds of cousins who would just show up to chat or whatever, neighbors, etc. discovering Mom was worth the effort. I discovered how rightly proud she was of her accomplishments. She was a great physical therapist who understood the importance of physical therapy. She told me she didn't need an EMG test to determine if a muscle was working. All she needed was her fingers. And she loved to also tell me the story about how she got the partially paralyzed 220-pound man to do what he thought he couldn't do. I discovered the definition of what the kids started calling her badass granny. It's my mom. She's a woman who originally had to give up a thing or two to allow for Dad's medical school and several other related careers for my dad. But everything was always what she wanted to do. The Paul and Harriet team established their foundation to aid high school students interested in paleontology and also students interested in ancient rats, such as the Acrodontus rosenorum they discovered. They also helped out union students who are interested in Judaism or possibly a free lunch. Mama volunteered at the Denver Natural History and Science Museum and the library, but after Dad passed away, at some point in her grandmotherhood, her badassery became more evident. When the doctors, nurses, counselors, and therapists asked her about herself, she was happy to tell them about her physical therapy experience and also her experience running hospice services in San Antonio, particularly after she elected for hospice, and running the first Medicare certified hospice in Boston. It was great. It was gratifying to see her glow when they responded with interest to his stories. In fact, she hated it, the medical record system they have there, because she said it was too hard to find things, but I was able to get into it all the time and find things. And in fact, the docs and providers all wrote that part of her history into the actual notes. She was an advocate for other patients until the end. Even when she was in the hospital room, there was another lady across the way on the other side of the curtain who she was always looking out for, whom they put in a sling for some unbeknownst reason and took it off. But that enabled her to go back to it turned out the same independent living place that Mom was at. And I remember the last week, she was even talking to the social worker for about finding ways that she could continue to be active and volunteer within the hospice organization. One of the things I received after she did pass was an email that commended her for being an Eshet Havia. I wasn't sure what that Hebrew term meant, so I looked it up on Google, found that in Hebrew, it's often translated as a woman of valor or a capable wife. And I was like, I'm sure that's always the same. So I asked to look at it further, and it turns out the capable wife was traditionally associated with the idea of a woman who's a caregiver and homemaker. Fair enough, that's early Mom. The term woman of valor carries a broader connotation, though, of strength, courage, and excellence in all aspects of life, not just in domestic duties. Sometimes it's used to describe a woman who's excelled in a range of areas, including wisdom, compassion, leadership, and community service. Mom was all of these things, but to me, it's more fitting to describe her in terms of the latter, valorous or fighting kind of definition. I remember Mom for her quick wit, sharp intelligence, and fierce independence. She was not one to shy away from speaking her mind or causing a bit of trouble when she felt it was necessary. Harriet was a true original, and she'll be deeply missed by all who knew her. Coming here and listening to the service too, it brought to mind that in the last couple of weeks, we tried to nail down with Mom what it is that she expected to be done when she passed away, which was obviously going to happen sooner or later in hospice. And she just kept saying, well, I don't care what's done, just so long as I'm put down there next to, I want to be buried near Paul. And I said, well, above him or below him, Mom. So I guess we went with the traditional next to him. So I'm happy about that. I think she is too. Rest in peace, Mom. You'll forever be in our hearts.
Thank you, Mark. And now I'd like to call upon Harriet's beloved daughter, Amy. Oh, I'm sorry, her granddaughter, Danielle.
Last time I saw Granny, she said to me that when she was in the hospital, she wore the badass Granny shirt I got her 4 days in a row. Let me explain. When I lived in Colorado, I interviewed Granny for a class and learned that she's a total badass. I learned that I could talk with Granny like she was a friend. It stayed that way until the end. I'm going to get you a shirt that says Badass Granny, I told Granny. She was worried that her friends in the community wouldn't know what badass meant. She didn't know what badass meant and didn't understand why I called her that. So I made her a shirt with the definition on the back. Badass. Of formidable strength or skill, ready to cause or get into trouble. So assertive, tough, or independent as to be somewhat intimidating, awesome, or impressive. Worthy of admiration. Zeke was in the hospital with her, dedicated, loving grandson. Granny said how much it meant to her, Zeke being there. The last time I saw her, I decided to share the poem I wrote a week after the diagnosis. Lung cancer, living inside you, my favorite kitchen dancer. I wrote and read, everything's connected, but I feel torn apart. My heart at the seams, sewn by you with love. My heart seems gently pulled apart by the impending loss of a matriarch. You bend an arc, gracefully compromise, never to your demise. Bend an arc goes the matriarch, a path chosen, bend but never broken. Autonomy is societally an anomaly, not to mention the attention you forced for yourself, not a fragile prize on a shelf. I bend an arc, don't break, too much at stake. Persistent, feminine, badass lineage. That was the poem inspired by her. She asked if she could keep the book and read all my poems. I gave her the first printed copy of my first working draft of my first poetry book. 3 days later, when I found out she died, I wondered and cried, did she get to read my poems? 3 hours later, I checked my email to find a message from the dead with a subject that read, your poems. Love you lots, Granny. The time before that, on the floor I sat, holding Granny's clothes with Zara and Uncle Mark. Granny commented that at puzzles, Rachel is so talented. Granny, Zara, Rachel loved puzzles. Ariel and I were not interested. Before that was Thanksgiving. Granny with her daughter's family. It was perfect. Best Thanksgiving I've had, I told her. Before that, I guess, was back in Denver. I could talk to Granny like a friend, and it stayed that way until the end. Granny, my granny, dancing in the kitchen and shake your fanny, wearing enviable clothes and so in love with her betrothed. When we were younger, I remember going to Hawaii in December. I love my photo of her using Pop-Pop's mug that said, cool dude. When Granny and Pop-Pop were in a mood, we called them, not to their faces, grumpy and poo-poo. In Hawaii, Granny said, I have sand in my hoo-hoo. Then we learned how folks in Hawaii say grandmother, tutu. That was the cue for us cousins to yell, Granny has sand in her, tutu has sand in her hoo-hoo. Speaking of her body part, Granny's writing was a work of art. Did she write about her sex life? Did I read it? I learned that I could talk to Granny like a friend, and it stayed that way until the end. When we were younger, Granny's cooking didn't satisfy my hunger. In front of each of us on a plate, Granny, Pop-Pop, Zara, and me was a salmon burger. It didn't taste great, but Zara still ate. I didn't want another bite. Zara wanted to be polite. When we switched plates when Granny and Pop-Pop weren't looking. When I lived in Colorado, Granny and I always went out to eat. I still didn't care for her cooking. So when we were teens, Zara ate my salmon burger too. The next day we went rock climbing. Pop-Pop drove, which is foreshadowing. The climber says, on belay, to which the belayer will respond, belay on. Zara was 15 feet up the side of the mountain. I said, on belay, and she responded, belay. salmon burger drips 15 feet down to the ground. Everything's connected, but I feel torn apart. My heart at the seams sewn by you with love. My heart seems gently pulled apart by the impending loss of a matriarch. You bend an arc, gracefully compromised, never to your demise. Bend an arc goes the matriarch, a path chosen, then but never broken. Autonomy is societally an anomaly, not to mention the attention you forced for yourself, not a fragile prize on a shelf. I bend an arc, don't break, too much at stake. Persistent, feminine, badass lineage. Adding on now that she's gone, bend an arc like a bow and sharp like the arrow. She was a badass wherever she'd go. Adam made you a quesadilla. We loved coming to see ya. I miss you so much. If you weren't Jewish, I'd vote to scatter your ashes at Goodwill. I want to be just like you, Granny. Plants on the windowsill. Granny, my granny, dance in the kitchen and shake your fanny. Naomi inspired by Granny's enviable clothes. Granny so in love with her betrothed. Arc and bend like a bow, I'm not ready for you to go. Arrow in my heart. Pop, pop gone, your life 2.0 was still at the start. At Hilltop, she started the puzzle table, attracting people to her. My God, was she able. Then for her new life in Boston, I was so excited. After only 1 week at Waterstone, Granny had a weekly Shabbat dinner to which she was invited. Green chapstick that colored her lips pink. My God, could that woman think? Granny, you were brilliant, really, and the last thing she gifted to Rachel was a medal. And I miss you, your brain, and your style. Please come back for a while. I miss your love. In my arms, you fit like a glove. One more hug, I'd say, with plans to see you the very next day. I miss you so dearly. You're back with your mom, dad, and beloved Paul, which mends my heart nearly. Granny, my granny, wrote personal essays of how she kissed him. My grandparents are gone, and I really miss them. I was not done gratefully gleaning their wisdom. 2 years ago, I learned that in my granny, I had a best friend, and it stayed that way until the end. Who, what, where varied, but 3 things would last. To Pop Pop, she wanted to be married. She was a badass. Yes, we'd like to see the dessert menu, and make no mistake, she'll order the chocolate cake.
And now a few words from Harriet's beloved girls, her beloved daughter.
How do you follow that?
Oh my gosh.
Early in life, my mom Harriet met Paul, the love of her life. Paul was always the center of her world, the magnet that held her close and impacted her life, her path in life. I think her next greatest love, second to Paul, was her precious garden, where she spent countless hours. She was always experimenting and moving things around. While it was a physical chore, she approached it more as an intellectual one, gaining understanding of the different plants and what made them thrive. It was never finished. She was always thrilled when her flowers bloomed. Harriet also loved to travel, mostly with Paul. She credited it with opening her mind to new cultures and ways of thinking about the world. Over the years, she and I traveled together as well, to London, Chicago, Seattle, Savannah. Honestly, I don't think she cared where we went. She just wanted to spend time alone with me, away from husbands and kids, making memories together. After Dad died, Mom missed him terribly. and would come here to yell at him regularly. That wasn't the plan, she would say, and sometimes even hit the headstone with her cane. But like her flowers, she was resilient, and she determined to keep busy and have meaning in her life. She continued all her activities to the extent possible and sewed 2,500 masks for distribution during COVID, stayed in contact with friends from the museum, exchanged jigsaw puzzles, learned to Zoom, met with the Havara, walked around her living room every day. Move it or lose it, she would say, a phrase she used when she was a tiny physical therapist bullying professional football players to rehab after injuries. When she moved to Hilltop Reserve, she channeled energy into her new community, welcoming other residents, starting the puzzle table and Scrabble group, always speaking up when she felt something could be improved. She still went to her favorite store, Goodwill, whenever she needed something. She set up her electronics, including her old radio receiver with the antenna taped to the side of the bookcase, to improve her signal when she listened to classical music. Mom didn't shy away from tackling any project. Some of you may know that when her 50-year-old oven in the house on Glencoe Street stopped working, she didn't replace it. Oh no. She researched which kind of element it needed, ordered it, and repaired it herself. During the time when Dad was sick and after he died, Mom turned to me and Mark for support. Unexpectedly, her relationships in general blossomed like her garden. With her 6 grandchildren, friends, and relatives, including her beloved brother Stan, both sisters-in-law Allison and Charlotte, cousin Steve, even my husband Ross. And I'm going to ad lib here. Even with my dear sister-in-law Ursi, I believe that there was appreciation from my mom in the end and forgiveness from Ursi. It was a revelation. My relationship with Mom underwent a metamorphosis after my dad died. And I don't think I'm the only one to feel that way. When the arrow on the compass of her life swung from her lifelong true north of Paul, she became an unexpected new Harriet. She became a different version of herself. I guess she became Badass Granny, the nickname used lovingly by her grandkids. Once she understood that the name referred to positive character traits and not an unattractive behind, she fully embraced it. In recent years, we spoke every day after years of limited and fraught communication and a strained relationship. We spent a lot of time together in Denver, Florida, Nantucket, finally Weston and Wellesley. That time was a gift to me. In the last few weeks, she moved to Massachusetts, while waiting for her belongings to ship cross country, we went to Sarasota, Florida. During that week, we went to the Selby Botanical Gardens, where she noted its differences from Denver horticulture, and she reminisced about her own garden. And then we went to the utterly unique Museum of Art and Whimsy. She loved it. From the fine art to whimsical and silly statues and crafts everywhere. We laughed that it was like the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum on crack. I think this museum reflected multiple sides of Mom, the serious, intellectual, and cultured, displayed next to the silly, fun, and unconventional. That was Mom. Initially, we didn't know that she had moved just in time. The last Saturday of her life, we had considered walking along the Charles River, going to see the Frida Kahlo exhibit at the museum at Brandeis University, and even watching a DVD of Sean Connery, Hubba Hubba. She had just borrowed from the local library with her brand new library card. Sadly, that Saturday didn't go as planned, as she began morphine to alleviate her pain that day. Unfortunately, her drug of choice, as she called Hershey's chocolate, was not strong enough anymore. The last few years and weeks together have been a gift to all of us to keep and hold close. There wasn't enough time. We wanted more, we expected more. But she went with a sense of contentment and gratitude, no regrets. She went how she wanted to. In her words, she had a long and wonderful life, did everything she wanted to, and the end was quick. She was so happy to be spending time with family, calling and visiting her. She felt loved and supported. We never told her what to do, but supported her to the end. She appreciated that, and she went with her competence respected. She was independent, but not alone. The time between diagnosis and morphine was too short, but it was a gift to her because she was truly touched by how many people reached out and showed how much they cared for her. She marveled that people really liked her. It may be sad in a way, but her realization was surprising and new, precious and authentic to her, knowing it wasn't, in her words, because she was pretty or wore nice clothes or jewelry or had a great job or a charismatic husband. Thank you to all of you for giving her that gift in the end. And thank you, Mom. You gave us the gifts of strength, love, and in the end, acceptance. I will miss you more than either of us would have imagined.
Mark. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Amy. Our tradition contains many stories of strong women, women who left behind a legacy for generations to follow. We have Sarah and Rebecca, our first two matriarchs, who gave us the legacy of loyalty, patience, and protection for their children. We have Rachel and Leah, who gave us the legacy of sisterly love. And with the Passover story this week, we have the midwives, Moses' mother, and of course Miriam, all of whom gave us the legacy of courage and strength. All great women, each of whom left a legacy for the generations to come. This morning we have all gathered to remember another woman of our tradition, another matriarch, Harriet Rosen. And like the great matriarchs of our Torah, she too has left us a legacy, one filled with lessons that will continue to guide us and help us as we continue a life now so greatly diminished by her loss. Harriet left us the legacy of determination and hard work. With her work in physical therapy, in healthcare administration, she dedicated herself to the care and treatment of her patients with visionary work. How many lives did she save? How many lives did she make better? How many people did she give comfort to? The number is beyond counting. But she did so much more than merely care for people under her watch. She became a champion for them. With her work with hospice and with the nurses, she made sure everyone got the care and comfort they needed. Even after retirement, Harriet continued to work for the betterment of others, volunteering at the Museum of Nature and Science, Public Library, and during COVID, as Amy mentioned, she lovingly sewed 2,500 masks, saving the lives of people she would never meet. Harriet left us a legacy of an adventurous spirit. Through her many travels to Australia and Antarctica and all the continents in between, Harriet and Paul experienced many places around the globe, and that added to her sophistication and appreciation of life. Harriet left a legacy of genuine warmth and a supportive hand that was extended to family and friends. She was always ready to add her special skills and strength, and she always added them with grace. Yet the greatest legacy left to us by Harriet is her legacy of love. Love for her husband, Paul, for her brother, Stan. Love for her children, Mark and Amy, and their partners. Love for her grandchildren, Ariel and Zara, Ezekiel, Danielle, Naomi, and Rachel, each of whom had the privilege and joy of having their grandmother in their lives as young adults. And love for her great-grandchild, Livy. Spending time with her family in her later years was always her greatest joy. This is Harriet's legacy to us: dedicated work, an intelligent mind, great warmth, and a deep and abiding love for family. These are the gifts that Harriet used to enrich her family, her community, and our world. And these are the gifts she gave to us. This is her legacy. May we, in the weeks and months and years ahead, live up to this legacy that she has bestowed upon us. May we, in her memory and honor, always work hard and always find a way to advocate for another. May we, in her memory and honor, always find our own inner adventurous spirit. May we, in her memory and honor, always continue to love and embrace all the generations of our families. In this way, we too can leave a legacy for our family and our friends when we no longer walk this earth. In this way, we will honor the legacy of Harriet Rosen. Kenyahi Matso. At this point in our service, we will chant the El Malay Rachamim, the traditional prayer of burial. At its conclusion, the casket will be lowered into the earth. When that is complete, I will ask members of Harriet's family and beloved friends to add the earth to her casket. It's like a blanket that we lovingly spread over her as she so lovingly spread a blanket over us while we were alive. A blanket of love and care. When that process is complete, we'll join together in the mourner's cottage. If one is able, we rise. Anabal harachami hasireha baseter kenapsakale honami utsur ditzror ha'ayim et nishmata Adonai. Betanuat bashalom mishkava menama. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect rest and peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure. To the soul of Hannah Bat Moshe Bechaviva, who has gone to her eternal home. O Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds of her life, all the goodness that she performed in the land of the living. May her soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Adonai, you are now her portion. May she rest with you forever. Bashalom, in peace. And we say, Amen. Shalom. Good night. Go for God. May your soul rest with God forever. first place on the back of the shovel to show our reluctance for the task. Then we turn the shovel over and add a little bit of dirt into the grave. Mark? We add the earth of Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. Well, it's Messiah. And she gave something else.
Be in the cemetery. Well, yeah, you can be. At least be Paul.
I like to call it. Would also like to participate. Are you okay?
It's you and Steve. It's you.
Ezekiel, come through. Could I call upon you to help me finish, please? Call upon you, Doug. I think she knows. I think she knows. Step back. Our service now continues. What we just performed was one of the oldest and most honored rituals of Jewish life. To be buried, to have our coffin covered with God's earth, not by the hands of strangers, but by the hands of people who knew us, who loved us, by the hands of family and friends. Thank you all. At the conclusion of the mourner's Kaddish, I'd like to invite all of those assembled to form two lines through which the family will pass. As they pass, we think of the words Hamakom Yerachem Etchem Ve'avnei Zion V'Yerushalayim. May you be comforted among all the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem, because Jerusalem is now in mourning and Zion has been diminished by the loss of another great matriarch. We now continue with our final prayer, the mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabah. V'alma dibera pirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dachot Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala u'bizman kari v'yimaru amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevarach le'olam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'al v'yoman v'yitnasel. Vitadar, Vitale, Vitala, Shemit Kisha, Berechu, Le'ela, Mikol, Birchata, Vishirata, Tushbachata, V'nechamata, Da'amiran, V'alma, V'maru, Amen. Yehesh, Ramaraba, Min Shemaya, V'chayim Aleinu, V'akol Yisrael, V'imaru, Amen. Oseh Shalom, Dimoma, Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu ve'akol Yisrael ve'imaru. Amen. The family has asked me to let you know that everyone is invited back to Hilltop for gathering and comfort and food at the conclusion of our service. Thank you. May I ask you to please form two lines.
Form two lines are going to be facing each other so the family can walk. Yeah, get up. Yeah, so face shoulder to shoulder, facing each other. Coming out over here. Some folks can get on this side too. We're gonna follow you right off. Okay. All right, the family can come over here and you follow me.
המקום ירחם אתכם באבל ציון בירושלים. באבל ציון. באבל ציון בירושלים. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for the support and comfort you will give your family during the moment